Comparing uncalibrated, non-selective power meters for CB, the K-po SWR-430 and the Zetagi Mod 203W by Paul, Mike 0, Whiskey November Uniform, or 26 Charlie Tango 730 if you catch me on 11 meters and PMR 446. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. It's Paul, Mike 0, Whiskey November Uniform, 426 Charlie Tango 730 if you catch me on 11 meters and PMR 446. Now you can see I've got a power meter here connected to my Thunderpole T800, which I use in the car, and I'm usually monitoring 19, but there's usually just the burner brigade on there, which is a bit annoying. So let's see what we got. The power meter that can read up to 100 watts. But it's also an SWR meter, but also I'm not onto a dummy load, I'm actually on the antenna. As you can see there, that's the SWR for the antenna. So if I set this to power, now this radio isn't doing the full 4 watts, so these don't do the full 4 watts out of the factory, they never do. This is probably doing closer to 3, if anything. I've not got any calibrated equipment to measure that, and I don't intend to spend money on that right now. So if I key this up now, ooh, that says 4 watts. Now most people will be like, yay, it's reading 4 watts, it's doing what it's meant to be doing. That's actually over the 4. That's 14.4 volts. That's with the car engine running. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to shut the car engine down, like so. So the battery voltage has now dropped to about 13.4, which is still within tolerance. That's going to keep going down because it's just we'd stood all night. It's gone down to 13.2, so it's not charged it up much. So look, it's still near the 4 watts because we're still within the electrical tolerance necessary for the radio to generate the full power. Not exactly 4 watts, because it's not really generating 4 watts. And remember, this is into an antenna, not a dummy load, so it's not 100% matched. So thereby, that all that isn't quite right anyway, because I'm measuring the power with the antenna in line. So I shouldn't be doing that. I do have a dummy load in the house, and I will be setting up the next set of tests with a dummy load and a nice selection of my other radios that I've got lying around in the house. Now, this is the Thunderpole T800. It's still available. It's a very slimline radio. I've covered it. I've had it for the last year now, since before the pandemic became a pandemic. I actually picked it up not long after I recovered from being ill, and my suspicions of what that actually was 12 months later, well, yeah, we know. So the other radio there's my Yaesu FTM 400 XDE, which is a 270 ham radio. It does Yaesu System Fusion and analog FM and APRS and a few other things, which I also use. And now on the roof, antenna wise, it's a Diamond NR 770 RSP for 270 and a Stereo High Power 4000 for CB, so I've got quite a good antenna up there. So I'm going to put that out to 19. The depends on where the burner brigade and such like are on there. So this is actually not a bad little radio. I use it pretty much all the time. It hasn't been on much recently, so that's GB3IR just waking up, telling me it's 3 o'clock. And tonight's the night of the Colburn and Richmondshire District Amateur Radio Society net, assuming there is a turnout. And this will be the first net run on. This is repeater number 2 that's currently in at the moment. Repeater number 3 is the one that was in before, but unfortunately that stopped working due to, I think it was electrical issues, I think the keeper said. So I'm going to disconnect that meter from this radio. I'm going to put the antenna straight back into it, because I don't need the meter in it. And I'm going to go back up to the house and I'm going to set things up there. So with dummy load, which means I've got to go and turn something else off as well that's got the dummy load on it, or I could just disconnect the cable from the front. It's either way, it doesn't matter. And put the dummy load onto that meter and also my Zetagi meter, because got to do this properly. Find out just how bad these cheap meters really are compared to calibrated test equipment that costs thousands and thousands, which the likes of us don't have access to, unless we actually run a business repairing radio gear, which is what Richard at UK FMCB Radio Servicing tends to do. So I'm going to go back up and I'm going to either sort that out, and filming will commence. Well, I don't know whether it'll commence the same day I film this part or whether it'll commence tomorrow. That depends on if I've got other things to do. Although I do actually have to sort out the tyre on this. So I will catch you back in the shack, all being well. Rightio, so it's took me a couple of hours because I've had other things to do today to get to this point in the video, and I've also had to put the antenna up. Obviously, as I said, I would do it into an antenna as well as into the dummy load. So I've got a switch down here which allows me to switch between the two. So that's the antenna and that's the dummy load. So I've got it all set up. I've got a little monitor receiver as well, so it's on the wrong channel at the moment. There we go. So my realistic TRC 1007 is the monitor receiver. That'll also flag up if there's any problems with, say, microphones. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the camera in, and we're going to start off working my way through all these radios, like one by one. So that's one of the first things I'm going to do, is bring the camera in, and we'll do both meters with each radio, and we'll see what happens. So we've got President Grant 2, which is my main base radio. Got a Midland 78 Plus multi with a blue display, Moonraker FA 5000, Thunderpole T800. There's a PNI Escort in there, and there's the Team Roadcom as well. What I won't be doing is that SS9900 because that's not legal and type approved. So I'll crack on with that. Right, so we begin with the President Grant 2 and the K-po meter. So I'm going to switch it to the dummy load. Well, I don't need to because it's already on the dummy load. So that's it on the antenna now, with an atrocious amount of QRM, which I'm probably going to guess is that mixing desk. There's somebody on that channel, which wouldn't surprise. No, that's QRM. Right. Okay, so I'm going to put this meter onto the power scale, like so. Let's see how much power this meter, which is a load of rubbish, says that this radio is actually doing. Excuse the feedback. Now, looking at that, it says that the radio's doing 4 watts. Now it should be. Bear in mind there is a switch here. My hand's actually in the way of that dummy load as well, which is not helping, but it's... Yeah, I'm not sure where that... Well, it's just got some noise there from something. I wonder if that's the... What's going on with that dummy load? I'm not sure what's causing that. But yeah, it's saying about 4 watts. So if I switch back to the antenna, which is, yes, the signal noise level's just actually dropped, so that's actually not so bad. So if I switch to, now if I key up now, it's saying a tiny bit under 4 watts. Bearing in mind that this is going through a switch and a few other things. But there's no way that the radio's anywhere near that. So
what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch it to the Zetagi meter, and we'll see what happens there. Okay, what I've done is I've swapped the meter over to the Zetagi meter. That's in the 10 watt range, so everything you see is a watt. Like 1 watt, 2 watt, 3 watt, 5 watt, 7 watts, 10 watts. Now, Richard over at UK FMCB Radio Servicing has picked one of these up and has shown against his calibrated test instruments that these meters actually lie, which is the whole idea of this video anyway. So that K-po one said that the President Grant 2 was producing on a dummy load around about 4-ish watts. So I'm on the dummy load. I'm going to key up again. Now that one is saying just a shade under 3. Ooh. Interesting. That's on the dummy load. Let's check this dummy load's actually properly connected. They're doing something very strange here, so I'm not sure whether that's to do with this cable or what it is. But it's saying about 3 watts is getting to that. Maybe not even that. Bear in mind I do have a monitor receiver. I'll turn the volume back on that bit. So we know that's working. It's at about 3 watts. Let's check it is on the watt setting. It is. Now I've put that onto the SWR setting. Now if I just move that across a little, my hand anywhere near that's causing weird things to happen. So it's saying the SWR's fine on the dummy load, so that's fine. I think there's RF getting around in places where it shouldn't be. That's okay. But I'm getting just about 3 watts there, so let's go back to the antenna. You'll see the signal levels shoot up. Ooh! Oh, I was not expecting that. I know why. Because the dummy load is close to the microphone. If I move that out of the way, I think. No, that's actually the antenna doing that. That's not ideal. And also, it's telling me that the Zetagi meter is a wee bit. I'm not going to say any more. The K-po one seemed to be better in this regard. But yeah, it's still showing 3 watts through the antenna. So I think this Zetagi meter is starting to. Yeah, so the K-po is saying 4-ish, give or take. That's saying about 3. Ooh. So that concludes that radio is definitely not doing 4 or 3 watts. Next radio. Right, next up is the turn of the Midland Allen 78 Plus Multi. Now, this radio is the one with the blue display. So it's a Multi-B. This is a Rev 5. I have had the cover off and had a wee nosy at that. Now, this one has the microphone connector on the driver's side in the UK, so that's kind of convenient. Now, we're on the Zetagi meter first. Let's see what, and just to check, now on the dummy load. Okay, so I'll just turn down my monitor receiver for a moment. Okay, the Zetagi meter says that radio is doing 3 watts. One thing I can be pretty certain of is that it's not doing 3 watts. That's onto the dummy load. Right, switch to the antenna. It's saying it's a tiny bit under 3 watts. Now, you know, that's definitely not doing what that's claiming it's doing. So I'm going to switch to the K-po meter and see what we got. So it's 3 watts on the dummy load, just under that on the antenna. Okay, we're on the K-po meter. So let's have a nosy. So 4 is just there. Ooh, there's a bit. I think there's a bit of banding going on there. I'm not sure if I can get rid of that or not. But the 4 is just, you can just see where my finger is. The 4 is just there. just slightly on the red zone of the 3 plus range of the SWR, which we're not looking at today. We're not looking at SWR. We're looking at the power measurements on these things. So I'm just going to try and bring it in a bit more. It's the best I think I'm going to do. I'll have to refocus on that. There we go. Because it does go out of focus. So let's see. We are on. Okay. We're on the dummy load. And this one says just over 4 watts. I'm pretty certain it ain't doing that. Yeah, that's saying just over 4. No. No, 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 no. Right, trying the antenna. And it's actually saying, oh, 3 there? Between the 2 and the 4, so I'd say it was 3 there. Oh no, it might be a bit more than 3. Right, this radio actually does have a low power mode, but I don't believe you can access it directly unless you're in a country that does 1 watt AM, so, or a country mode that does 1 watt AM, so I'm pretty sure everywhere's allowed 4 watts AM these days. So we're not going to try that on this radio yet, because I have seen it operate down to 1 watt in low power mode in some AM settings. But this is FM 2781, because that's what my antenna's resonant at. And yeah. So it's 4 on the dummy load, or just over. Well, actually, I think it might be 5. And just under that, somewhere between 3 and 4 on the antenna. Yeah. Right, so it's time to get the next set. And the next set is obviously the next one on the pile. So, but obviously what I'm doing is I'm just going to start with the meter that's already connected, because it is a bit of a pain to just unscrew the connectors at the back and everything. So let's get the next set on the bench. Okay, next up is the turn of the Moonraker FA 5000, which is the first CB radio I bought with my own money. The CB I had previous to that, only for I think a few weeks, was an Audio Line 341 that was destroyed by its owner. Well, when I say destroyed, he basically acted all screwdriver experty, because I couldn't hear him and just fiddled around with all the potentiometers and coils inside it. You know, he was one of those types that seemed to think he knew everything but didn't. So that's why I refused to ever let him near this Moonraker FA 5000. He's no longer my friend. Circumstances dictated that it would be best I cut ties with him. So, and the rest is history. So this FA 5000, as I said, first CB I bought with my own money. So I've got the meter. The CB's just there, it's out of focus. I'm not a big fan of the Moonraker FA 5000, to tell you the truth, because the audio on it is actually pretty quiet. It does come with an up-down mic, so I can just, yeah, although it's an up-down mic with a bit of a fault, so you can tell this is old, very old, and I think the connector actually on the board's starting to fail as well. So. But let's see what it's doing on our rubbishy K-po power meter. And that one's on the dummy load, and it is in fact doing it says 6 watts. Come on, that is not 6 watts. I'm just going to readjust the angle of that, because I think the angle might be slightly off for you guys. See if I can get that sorted out again. Yeah, I see the problem straight away, because the Zetagi meter is underneath. That's causing problems. So let's do that again, just to be fair. Give it a chance. No, that's saying quite close to 6 watts. I mean, No, it doesn't do 6 watts. It was not legally entitled. So that's definitely not doing 6 watts. And if I turn up the volume on that, well, yeah, that's not even modulating. Yeah, there's definitely something not quite right with that radio. It's a bit, you know, it's rubbish. So it's only putting out rubbish, and it's apparently claims it's doing 6 watts. Now, about to put dead carrier onto the air. So that's now on the antenna, and the S meter shot right up because I've got the RF gain set to full. So this radio is not good for anything. I've got TTI TCB-550. I should test that as well. Yeah, except it's in a bit of an awkward place and I can't really get at it. So I'm going to have to do that one another time. Whoa, I'm getting buzzy noises in my headphones, but that's apparently saying 4 watts. I'm not sure if you're getting those same buzzy noises, but I'm getting them. I think my headphones are picking up the RF, but I'm not sure if you're getting them. So 4 watts on the Zetagi meter on the antenna. Allegedly 6 watts or near enough on the dummy load, which it isn't doing that. It really isn't. It's not doing any of those quoted values at all. I'm pretty sure of it. So there's a Zetagi meter is next, and I'm looking forward to that one. Okay, so just after a few technical issues with the audio chain, whilst I was swapping the meters over, we're now actually onto the Zetagi meter. So we had 6 watts on the dummy load, which we are on at the moment. Yeah, we're definitely on it. On the K-po, what will the Zetagi tell us? Bear in mind, it's going through switches and everything. 3 watts. Antenna. Ugh. About the same. Yeah, 3 watts in both cases. Am I getting any audio out of this radio now? Oh, I am a bit. Still crackly and horrible. Oh, it's just working now. 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. Woo! The FA 5000 is one of those unique FM only sets. It's one of the last of the PR2797s. Although it's got, I think it's got some AM bits in there as well. That actually has a modulation meter. I think the AM FM switch on here is actually a lock button. So it just locks the keypad. It doesn't do anything. Yeah, this is one of the last of the PR2797s. Although it's not actually type approved to that spec, it's type approved to a later spec. Well, a newer spec. But it still was perfectly legal to use in the UK when I first got it, and it still is to this day, as long as it works and doesn't do anything it shouldn't. I've just turned off my monitor receiver, which has something in common with this. Defaults to channel 9 when the power's removed. On this one though, if you disconnect the power completely, it'll go back to channel 9, but on this it just goes back to channel 9 if you just turn that switch off. So I think that switch actually just disconnects the batteries. So it could be the same IC, I don't know, I've not actually investigated that. It's a channel changing switch. Go back up to channel 20 because that's the one we're using. So 3 watts registered on that, just over on the dummy load. Which is on that. On the antenna, about the same. Bearing in mind it's still going through a switch and everything. So the next one to try on the pile is the dinkiest little one of them all. That's going to be a bit of a fun one. So what I'll do is I'll leave the FA 5000 in place so I can stand this next one, which is the PNI Escort HP 7120 on top of it. So I'll go and do that, and we'll be starting with the Zetagi meter. Right, so we've got the PNI Escort HP 7120 next. It's just there, you can probably see it glowing brightly. It's on channel 20. I've put it onto manual squelch. I'm just going to check the RF gains out, because if that's in, then yeah, that can cause some problems. It wants to be on. So it wants to be on. That's just an attenuator, that, so speakers in the bottom on this, so it's sounding a bit muffled. Let's turn that on to the dummy load first. Let's see what the Zetagi meter says about the dinky little PNI Escort HP 7120. On the dummy load, apparently this radio is doing 4 watts. I'm pretty certain it isn't. I also happen to know these radios can be modified to do allegedly 8 watts, but I would not do that because it could kill them quicker than they should. So again, dummy load, the Zetagi meter says just a shade over 4 watts. Oh, 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. I'll do that with that because it's got a really dinky little microphone, and you know, it's worth a shot. I haven't got the telescopic extended on the realistic because in here, next to that dummy load or the antenna outside, there's really just not the need. So, and that's the back of my chair has fallen off. Oh, delightful. Okay, next, it's the turn of the antenna. It's saying the sort of the same thing, actually. So it's saying about just a shade over 4 watts on the antenna through the Zetagi meter. And I'm just losing the president's microphone on the floor. Don't want to do that. Right, so next is the turn of the K-po meter. Now, given with the last radio what that was saying, this could be quite interesting. Okay, so the K-po meter doesn't seem to be cooperating with this radio for some reason. I don't know if it's the radio, nor do I know if it's the antenna, or the dummy load, or the switch, or anything in between, because no matter what setting I have this switch to, I key up, it's misbehaving. Now if I put that in the SWR setting, that actually isn't the SWR setting. So if I put it into the forward setting, I put that on its stop, that's now on the stop. If I flick the switch to reflected, it just goes all the way over full scale like there's a short circuit. If there is a short circuit, it can only be in the cabling between the switch which is now on dummy load, and I'm still getting the same thing. So it's between, so it's, yeah, there's something not quite right here. So I'm going to have to abandon the PNI Escort HP 7120 for the K-po meter until I can figure out what's going on there. I'm going to try changing the cables over and seeing what happens there. So I might have to let's see, if I disconnect both the cables from the meter, Okay, so that's one off. That's the other off. I'm going to do a quick test and put them back into the Zetagi meter without hitting the microphone. And if the Zetagi meter does not register a high SWR, then it's not, then the cables are perfectly fine. So this is unfortunately not something I expected, but I do want to get this one through on the K-po meter. I don't want to give up, because this is comparing both meters. So you know me. Keep going until I can get it done. Now, if it turns out that the Zetagi meter, which I've now connected up, does exactly the same thing as the K-po, then there's something wrong somewhere. And I have to rule out what's causing that problem. So, it's switching between the two fine. So if I put that into the SWR position, you can't see this at the moment because I'm just fiddling around with it. I then key up the radio. That's just swung everything across because that potentiometer is like at maximum. So I've got to set that back till it's on the stop. Oh, you know what? Something's acting like a dead short circuit here. And I've got to rule out what it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to completely bypass the switch with the dummy load. It's the first thing I'm going to do. And if that works fine, then I'll have ruled out what the problem is, because it wasn't doing that initially. Switch feels alright. So okay, so that's... So the dummy load is now on the meter. Dummy load is working just fine. So I'm going to take the cable off the switch and I'm going to connect that to the dummy load, which will rule out whether the switch is at fault. Because if the switch is not at fault, I may have another cable I can use. I'm just trying not to do anything here that's going to break the radio. Okay, so without losing the dummy load, I'm going to key up again. That cable's fine. So the next thing I need to do is disconnect the antenna, because I know I then connect the cable to the back of the Zetagi meter in place of the dummy load. Now this is a heavier cable, so it's going to pull absolutely everything. And this will rule out whether the switch is at fault. Now unfortunately that's caused me a new problem in which I can't move the meter downwards without hitting the camera. So I'm trying to avoid hitting the camera. So if I key up, you know what? I think my switch might actually be the problem. So I can still do the rest of the tests, but I think my switch might be at fault. So we'll double check the switch with a continuity tester off camera, and I'll pick this up. I'll have to pick this up in the morning, or whenever I can. So I'm going to stop for now while I do some diagnostics. So I've changed the recording device over to my Oppo phone. I'm using a fill light as well to help, because I'm not sure whether the native camera app in my Alcatel has that or not. So we can see the meter a wee bit better. This is for... Now I've managed to sort of resolve the problem. We're on SWR mode at the moment, and that seems fine. Let's turn that down, because that's the monitor receiver crackling away in the background. But everything seems to be back to normal. That's the dummy load. Into forward mode, just make sure it's set properly. That's actually showing a wee bit off there. Oh, it's just gone out of focus. Bear with. Okay. I'm getting very little deflection. I think my antenna must be almost perfectly matched. But anyway, let's go back to what we were doing, which was the power. So on the antenna, that's showing between 3 and 4 watts around probably about 3 watts, I think. So just straighten that out, because I'm pretty sure it's not dead straight to the camera. Just give you guys a chance to have a proper look at it. It's probably the better imagery, actually. I'll just reset the focus so it's over there as well. There we go. Yeah, it's just landing between the 2 and the 4. So that's saying 3 watts. We had about 4, I think it was, on the Zetagi. I'd have to come back to that. So that's on the antenna. Let's go on to the dummy load. That's actually now hitting 4 on the dummy load. And that's also moved again, so I'm going to try and straighten that back out and refocus again. This is a bit annoying, because every time I move it, it goes out of focus. It's not focusing on what I wanted to focus on. So it's actually going on to the 4 watt scale. About 4 watt, it says. The radio's not doing 4 watts, I know that. So that's pretty much my situation resolved. And I'm now on a different recording device. So I'll put the meter back over here. There we go. Again, that's the dummy load. That's the antenna. For reference, SWR on the antenna, SWR on the dummy load. I'm right in the middle of the band, which is why the SWR is as low as it is, which is surprising. So I'm not sure how much of that power is actually being radiated. So you know, right. In that case, we're ready to go on to the next radio, which is the Thunderpole T800, and we'll start with the K-po meter. Okay, next up is the Thunderpole T800. It's just there out of focus, and the display on that is a wee bit shimmery, so I think it's multiplexed. It's one of these radios that has an auto and manual squelch. So I'm just going to set the squelch. So knock it up a bit more, actually. Okay, so it's also got, as you can see there, an LED bar graph for a signal strength and transmit meter. So if I was to transmit, all those bars light up like that, and the ASQ lights red to say it's transmitting. But we're not interested in that. It looks more like a radio from the bad old days. I'm trying to get it to focus back in on the meter now because the meter's out of focus. There we go. Okay, so it's the meter we're interested in. How much power is this meter when I get it straight onto the camera, because it's not quite straight to the camera, which makes it look like it's not gonna, makes it look like the needle isn't quite where it should be. So how much power is that meter going to claim that radio is actually doing? Let's see. So that's on the antenna, and that's on the dummy load. So on the dummy load, so at the moment the SWR is still okay, so I haven't reintroduced what fault it was, which is a good thing, so I wanted to check that. So it claims that radio is doing, on a dummy load, 4.5, nearly 5 watts. One thing I can be absolutely certain of, it's not doing that. So on the antenna, which is now causing buzziness in my headphones, it's just slightly under 4 watts. Yep. So that's on the K-po meter on the dummy load, and on the antenna. We'll just check the SWR hasn't gone anywhere. It has not. And that's a good thing. And of course, because I've been doing it the last few. 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. This has also got an RF gain control on it that works. So if I go to the antenna, I turn that all the way off, the light goes out. Earlier versions of the T800 had an RF gain control, but it didn't work in FM, which was a bit pointless, but they rectified that because that's actually a different chassis inside to the earlier versions. It's actually very similar to some of the PNI sets in there, but I've not actually opened that one because there is a warranty seal on it, and I am not opening that radio. So I'm going to swap over to the Zetagi meter. Well, I didn't expect that. The Zetagi meter is almost filling the camera up. Oh dear. Right. So it's still on the T800. You can probably just see the channel display flickering ominously there. So that's currently on the antenna, and that's on the dummy load. And yeah, it's okay. So start on the dummy load. This needs to be back in the watt settings. It was in the SWR setting earlier from my tests, to make sure it wasn't the meter being weird. 2.5 apparently. Into a dummy load. Let's check that SWR is calibrated properly as well, so I can actually see the meter from here. Yeah, just shy 2.5 watts on this meter. So that's interesting, I wasn't expecting that. Yeah, and although you can probably just see the red of the 4 bars lighting, trust me, they're all lighting up. And yeah, it's just saying 2.5 watts ish, give or take. Not much more than that. Now let's try on the antenna. Same again, 2.5 watts. It's weird. I'm getting a buzzy in my headphones again. 1 2 1 2. Yeah, I've still got the monitor receiver turned up a bit as well. I hadn't noticed that, but it is turned up. Yeah, I'm getting some buzzing in my headphones. It's really weird that. So that's on the antenna. That's 2.5 watts. So that's on the antenna. Just checking I'm getting any RF back in the shack while I'm thinking about that. Doesn't seem to be the case. On the dummy load, exactly the same. 2.5 watts. That is odd. The Zetagi meter is reading lower than the K-po meter. I'm a bit confused by that. Because Zetagi sell linear amplifiers. But having said that, Zetagi aren't the only ones. Because I have behind me a K-po EA35 linear amplifier. I'm obviously not going to use that because, well, it's illegal for starters, and not only is it amplifying the actual wanted frequency, it's also amplifying the harmonics as well, and yeah, don't want to be doing that. And I'm reserving that exclusively for 10 meter use anyway. May as well. So yes, there's just one more radio to go, and that is the Team Roadcom FS UK. So that's the last radio I'm doing. And it's nice to get the Thunderpole T800 on an aerial, because I don't do that very often. It's a good radio though, I like it. So next one is the Team Roadcom FS UK. So I'll crack on with that. Right, last radio. Well, for this session anyway, because I'm going to do the TTI TCB-550 and my Thunderpole T800 at a different date. Same sort of thing. So this is the Team Roadcom FS UK. It's a DIN mounting CB radio with a front firing speaker. I bought it for my currently on hold camper van project. So obviously it's on hold because my significant other does not like the idea of me buying Ford products, so I'm having to do some research finding alternative vehicles for that, and also I took a bit of a hit financially when I had to have a new clutch on my car. So there was that, so, and there's other things I'm saving up for as well, so you know. So we want to find out whether this radio, which is quite nice, I like it, it's got everything you need, it's got Vox, so you can, which is actually I think required in some countries these days. So as soon as I start talking, that'll start transmitting like that, you see. I'm not pressing the PTT here. You'll see a little red light, it's out of focus because we're focusing on the meter. I can knock that off. It has CDCSS as well, which is another handy little feature to have. And there are some jumpers in there which allow it to go into different modes and such like, which basically configure it for different markets. Now this one came with that K-po power and SWR meter I'm using, because it was a job lot of stuff off eBay. The mag mount that's on my car for CB also came with that, as did the cable that's currently on it, because I actually rewired that mag mount because the cable that came with it was, well, we'll say ruined, as well as the linear amplifier I alluded to behind. So I'm guessing the previous owner liked to run this thing through a linear. The S meter is always reading like the first 2 bars, so I'm wondering if it's been fiddled with, but the audio on air seems fine because my spouse was using this radio when obviously they were in the country and they couldn't obviously use the amateur radio bands. I had something in the car anyway, so it made sense to use CB radio, and I set this one up in the bedroom. I've only brought it out today, so it stays in there at the moment, specifically for this purpose. So let's see what the Zetagi meter says that the Team Roadcom FS UK is actually doing. So it says the Team Roadcom FS UK that into the dummy load, which is what we're on at the moment, it is in fact doing just shy if not a bit more than 2.5 watts. That's weird. If it's been fiddled with, it would be higher than that. So I don't think that's maybe been fiddled with. I don't know. Take it off. So if I switch it to the antenna, Maybe we can hear the burner brigade. Not today, no. So back to channel 20. So on the antenna, which we're not supposed to measure it on, it's also a little bit above 2.5 watts. I'm still getting buzzing in my headphones. This radio also has a little bit of a party piece on it. So I turn up the monitor receiver, not loud enough. There's a signal button on the remote, on the microphone. So it kind of generates like a tone. So you press that, that'll get through if the receiving station is quite some way out of range, but can just barely hear you. You press that, then they know you can still hear. Quite a clever little feature. Team is a German company, I believe, so therefore that's actually a good idea. Microphone on this is a lightweight microphone, but it's okay. So it has that little signal button on it. So we got 2.5 watts on the Zetagi meter, on both on the antenna and the dummy load. So I'm going to switch to the K-po meter. Oh, I'll best point out that this is the one I actually repaired the microphone for, in case you're wondering. So we'll go to the K-po meter next, and we'll see what happens there. Okay, we're on the K-po meter. It's a bit close to the camera, but you can just see where all the numbers are. Now, we got 2.5 watts on the Zetagi meter. Now, that's in SWR mode at the moment, so I can just press that and confirm the SWR is perfectly fine. I go to the power mode and the 10 watt setting. So basically, what you see there is starts at 0 and then ends at 10. That basically is the scale. You switch into the 100 watt settings, you multiply all those numbers by 10. So let's see, 2.5 watts on the Zetagi, what we're getting on the dummy load on the K-po. Really? It's just a touch over 4 watts. Really? As the transmitter's heating up, it's slightly dropped, but yeah, it's just a touch over 4 watts. Does this tone make it any different? No, it doesn't. Because the transmitter's heating up, it's in 4 watts. So it's not warm, but you know, that's designed to be used in an enclosed space anyway. So that's on the dummy load. What about on the antenna? Local CBers are probably going to go mental at me now, but it's quite late at night, so there shouldn't be anyone on. Right, I'm getting the buzzing in my headphones again, but surprise, surprise, I'm getting 4 watts. That's 4 watts on the K-po meter. 3.9 to 4 watts, as 3.9 as the transmitter heats up. That is, well, peculiar, because the Zetagi meter, the one proven by Richard Shireby at UK FMCB radio servicing to read higher than a calibrated test set, is in most cases on my tests reading lower than that. So I'm not sure here. So that's a conclusion we can draw. That's 4 watts. This radio is not doing 4 watts. I don't believe it's been fiddled with. I have had a nosy inside. It doesn't look fiddled with to me. I've not seen any of the telltale signs of the burner brigade and their screwdriver expert mates and such like all going in there and turning things up just to try and get a bit more power out of it. There was a linear supplied with this thing. So, you know, I wonder if the lot in Middlesbrough are on. Well, I don't know. That's squelch. I think this has gone auto squelch position, which is a bit. There you go. You can just say here's something in the background there. Have a quick flick around. Probably mostly noise. Oh. Here comes to reset the CPU doing that. First time this has been on an antenna at home since my spouse was here, actually. Let's get rid of that. So yeah, I think on conclusion here, it's the K-po meter that's reading really high. I don't have anything calibrated to test this against, but it seems that this meter is reading higher. Well, I'm just going to reset the camera for the conclusion to the video. Right, so the conclusion I can draw from this is, well, this meter, I'm not sure you can see it, it's still connected actually, because I haven't disconnected it now, so I don't need it anymore. This is not really a very well planned or thought out, is it? No, it isn't. Disconnect that. And that, and turn the radio off. Right, so this meter is reading higher. Oh, my microphone's actually all the way over there. Let's bring it over. There we go. So this meter is reading higher in some instances, if not most. Let's turn off my realistic while I'm at it, so I don't want to flatten the batteries. Then that, which I'm finding interesting, is by the fact that this reads higher than a test set used by a radio engineer who actually repairs CB radios as one of his jobs. So, right, I'm not sure what to make of that. Anyway, this is Paul, Mike 0 Whiskey November Uniform, or 26 Charlie Tango 730. If you catch me in 11 metres or PMR 446 at nearly 1 in the morning by the time I'm finished this. So, 7-3s guys, keep yourselves safe, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and, you know, I'll catch you on the next one. So, 7-3s for now guys.